Welcome, and Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And so, I was reviewing what we did yesterday, and I wasn't happy with myself on some of the stuff that we did. And so I wanted to go back and make sure that I try to correct in some cases. In one case, I omitted a Rashi and I wanted to go back and do that. So let me see what I can do here. Let me go here. Yes. So this is one place. Um, I had translated this particular Ezekiel quote as a Silon Mamir, and I translated Silon as a like a torrent or a stream or something like that. Um, I looked it up again, and it actually there are two. Interestingly enough, while I definitely, as you can see, it means a thorn, and Mamir is a wonderful word that came from Jastrow. And of course, he's trying to do Marim Hamaorarim. Rashi's working with this particular word, right? And interestingly enough, the word Silon can also mean like a conduit. And I think what had happened was I had read this word in a Talmudic context where it was talking about a gutter, and that's why I went in that direction. But it does have this meaning as well. And in the context of Ezekiel, he's talking about, and the word pernicious, I looked it up, actually has to do with something that has like it's tearing away slowly at something and continually. So something that's pernicious means that it's slowly getting worse and worse and worse. That's what the word means. So somehow this is a thorn that's tearing away slowly at someone, is what I suspect is the Ezekiel context here. Um, it also occurred to me that, you've heard me tell you that the word blessing, the first time it's used in the Bible is in connection with be fruitful and multiply. And the idea of being blessed is something that is either increasing or is reliable, but essentially has to do with plenitude. That's the way I translate it. And that's Baruch. And if the opposite of Baruch is Arur, right, then the inner meaning of cursing is diminishment, right? Is getting something, diminution, getting less and less and less. So that's in fact what is going to happen here with the woman's body, right? It's going to waste away. And that's why it's so helpful. Rashi's being so helpful here in trying to understand that it's not that these are waters of cursing, uh, but but there's a connection between cursing and wasting away, that they're directly related to each other. So I really wanted to go back and clarify that because I felt really bad about not really giving you a decent interpretation there. So that's one unfinished business. Let me see if I have another. If there was another place, there was another place which is now kind of escaping. Oh, yes. Let me look and see. It was a Rashi that I omitted. So let me see if I can find that. Let's see here. No, we did that. I tried to mark the place. Uh, Looking here, we did that. It could be right in here. Let's see. Nope, not there. Here it is. There it is. Although that's right where we hear. Um, Something here. All right. Uh, well, I think this is honestly all right. If I can find the other place, I will let you know. Right. So let's see. But maybe this is sorry about that. Yes, this is the Rashi I did not complete yesterday. Forgive me. Yeah, because we went up to 21. right? Vehishbia, right? The priest, and the word, in other words, should make her swear. So I believe there's a good English word, adjure, adjure, which describes making someone else swear. And so the hishbia is a causative construction of the word shvu'ah, the shavea, to swear. So he makes her swear, or he made her swear. So he adjures her. Umahi shvu'ah, and here specifically, what is this oath that she has to take? Im lo shachav hinaki, right? If he did not lie, right? If he did not lie with you, be cleared, right? And I pointed out yesterday how so interesting that here she is coming under suspicion of adultery, and yet the oath is being administered with the notion initially that she's innocent, right? That there's a presumption. I don't know if it's right to call it presumption exactly, but there's a articulation of innocence before any the suspicion, right? Ha im shachav Kanki, right? So there's a play in words, and there those who say that actually a misprint. So it says okay, right. Im lo shachav hinaki ha im shachav. So he's simply saying that the implication, it's not stated, right? The implication is that if he did in fact lie with her and chaniki or chanki, choke, you deserve strangulation. But there are other manuscripts, farim acherim lo tinaki, where it simply is, you will not be cleared. And now Rashi goes on. This is actually an important Rashi. Shemichlal lav atashumeahen. And this is the principle that from a negative statement you infer a positive statement. In other words, if you didn't lie, that etc. etc. The Torah doesn't have to explicitly say, and if you did lie, if you did in fact have carnal relations, doesn't have to say that. You can infer that from the way it's said, and either way, it goes both ways. Okay. Ella. But so he says, so why are we doing this, right? So why are they doing it this way? She's coming in, after all, under suspicion of adultery. So why don't they even mention it at all at this? Why do they start off with the innocence, right? Ella, however, shemitzvah liftoch b'dinei nefashot tchila lischut, that part of the process of entering into a capital case is that you always start off with the presumption of innocence. That is where you start. You start off discussing the innocence of the person. You don't start off right off the bat with the assumption of guilt. And I think that part of that has to do with understanding the psychology of human beings, that if you want to try and be sure that it isn't just you know, a kangaroo case, but that it's being judged fairly, right? And equitably, etc. You have to start off with your mind not already made up. And that's the scary part, right? Is that so often there's a statement that I've heard, which I love, which is, you know, don't try and convince me otherwise. Something, I may have had this wrong right now. Maybe you can correct me on this, right? My mind's already made up, right? Don't try to tell me anything else. I've already decided. Don't tell me the truth. My mind's already made up. But I think there's a better formulation than the one I just gave you. But it's basically the same idea. All right. So let's go here. Let's try this. This is where we are. Like that. There we are. Here we are. This is where we left off. But I honestly had some of the unfinished business, and I really felt it was important to do my best not to mislead you. Right. So he says this again, by the way, and hopefully we're going to find something interesting here. Because a question was raised yesterday. What about the man? I mean, he was involved in this, right? But let's just keep going. We'll see. Vehishbia hakohen et haisha. So really, we notice the parallel statement, right? Same again, right? The priest should adjure the woman, bishvuat ha'Allah, right? So with this oath of Allah, so dilvata, right, is the Aramaic. I translated it as the curse, but understand it in the context of everything else I said to you, right? But Amar, so something, a diminution, but Amar HaKohen Lisha, and the priest should say to the woman, now we have a quote, Yiten Yiten Hashem otach la'ala v'lishvu'ah. Right? She has not confessed, right, that she's done this, and now he says, um, may the Lord make you as a spoken curse. And Rashi will explain that. So apparently Sfaria has the word imprecation. So it must be, that's what a spoken curse, right? Belishvu'ah, and an oath. Rashi's going to explain to us what is really at stake here. Betoch amech, amongst your people. In other words, basically he's telling her she's going to have such a terrible reputation. And Rashi again will explain how. Betet Hashem yirechech nofelet, in that God is going to cause your thigh to fall away, ve'et bitnech sava, and your stomach to swell. Right? Okay, let's take a look at Rashi. Here we go. Large Rashi here. Bishvu'at ha'ala. Shvu'ah shel klala. So he says, this is an oath that has a curse attached to it. Yiten Hashem otach la'ala v'gomer. May the Lord will make you into a curse, right? Etc. Spoken curse. Well, here's how. Jiyu hakol mekalalim bich. That people, when they curse, are going to use you as the standard of cursing, right? And here they're going to say, Yevo ech or Yevo echa kederech sheba leflonit. What should happen to you is what happened to so-and-so, meaning the woman now. In other words, what's going to happen to you is so awful that people are going to say, when they curse someone, they're going to use you as the example. Vilishvua. So how about an oath? See, and this is in Sota Yudchet, right? That tractate that deals with this situation. And another tractate, Shavuot, Oaths, on page 24. These Talmudic tractates that go into minute detail regarding all these. And here's what's going to happen there. Sheyu hakol nishba'in bich. That is to say, that people will make an oath, take an oath, using you as the example. In other words, lo ye'era li kederech she'ira lefoni. In other words, they're going to say, may it not happen to me the way it happened to so and so, right? And I think what they would say, actually, I think the way you would actually state it in English at any rate is, if I'm lying to you, may such and such happen to me. That's, like it happened to so and so. And there are other examples, right? In Isaiah 65, V'hinachtem shimchem l'shvu'ah, and your name, your reputation, right? Your names, I suppose we should say here, you shall leave your names as an oath, right? Levichirai, to my chosen ones. And so I mentioned, right? Here's Rashi explaining this somewhat puzzling verse. Sha'at tzadikim, that is to say, that the Vichirai would be my chosen ones, the righteous ones, in other words. Nishba'im b'pura notan shel rishaim, that they're going to be able to make oaths using the consequences, right? The terrible things that are going to happen to the wicked. Not only that, also though, when it comes to blessing, right? A person can also be a standard of blessing. So, for example, a famous example is in Genesis chapter 11. I think it's actually Genesis chapter 12. I could be wrong, but I think that this is with Abraham, right? Where God says, nations also will bless themselves by you. In other words, if you say to somebody, may you be blessed like Abraham, right? And then also in Genesis chapter 48, B'cha Yavarech Yisrael. This is where Jacob is speaking to Joseph, right? Lamor, saying, and that's the blessing, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh, which some of you are familiar with, right? As a standard of blessing. Et yerechech. So why dafka, right? Why dafka her thigh, your thigh? Biklala hikdim yerech levitin. The reason why he precedes the thigh to the stomach, lefi sheba hitchila ba'avera tchila, because the thigh was the part of her body with which she sinned to begin with. Okay, tzava. Okay, so a very unusual Hebrew word. Rashi's helping us with the translation. He says, you can look as far as the Aramaic. Nefucha. Nefuach is a more common Hebrew word to mean swollen, swollen. Right. Going on. Let's make sure. Okay. Uvahu hamayim hama'arerim ha'ele. And these waters, again, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting how to translate these waters that of reduction, should I call them that, right? Uva'u, and these waters, these ha'ela, these waters shall come b'me'ayich, into your innards. Litzbot beten. Now we're starting here, right? Now we're using the stomach first, to cause your stomach to swell. Not yours, I'm sorry. To cause the stomach to swell. V'lanpil yarech. And to cause the thigh to fall away. I'm trying to be careful about my translation here. But Amra Ha'isha, Amen, Amen. And the woman has to say, Amen, indeed, indeed, indeed. I affirm, I affirm. So now we sort of have a better idea of what the word Amen means, right? It's a personal affirmation of what a person has said. Now, let's keep going here. I hope we can get this done, right? Litzbot beten, right? So in other words, kamo la hatspot beten. So Rashi is now going into some grammatical things here, because litzbot, to cause the stomach to swell. And you heard to cause. In other words, it takes on a construction of causation, which is the hifil form. It's called the hifil binyan, the hifil construction. And he says it's actually le hatspot. That's the normal way in which you construct the verb in the hifil in this case. But the hey, of course, is a weak letter, and it gets elided, is what Rashi's going to tell us, right? Zehu shimush patach halamed. This is the way in which the use shimush of patach, of the patach. That's the verb, that's the vowel that, see, notice here, right? Notice that's a patach right there, right? Of the lamed, and here's the lamed. Nikudabo, when the lamed is pointed with a patach underneath, right? It becomes, in that situation, the hay becomes elided, is what we're going to find out. V'chein, and likewise, lan chotam, right? But haderech, to show them the way. Causative again, to cause them to see the way, something like that. Lar otchem, okay, baderech. Again, the same idea, right? To show you. It's the same. This is to guide you. This is to show you. Asher telchu, in the way that you should walk, in it. V'chein, and likewise, lan pil yerech. So that's why we have likewise here, to cause the thigh to fall away. Lahan pil yerech, right? So the hay is being swallowed up. Shehamayim matzbi'im et habeten, that the waters cause the stomach to swell. Umapilim et hayerech, and they will cause the thigh to fall away. This is where I was hoping to get today, and I'm over time, I can see, but I'm going to do it. I think it's important. Let's bot beten lanpil, this is a misprint here, yerech. Bitno v'yerecho shel bo'el. It's referring to the stomach and the thigh of the adulterer, the man. And then in typical halachic midrashic form, it questions that. It wants to prove that that's what it's referring to. that when the priest is telling this to the woman, when the woman's drinking the water, if she is guilty, this is going to happen to the man as well. But they question it, they in order to prove it, right? Or eino ella shel niv elet. Well, but wait a second. Why can't we argue that no, it is talking about her, about the one who was with whom the adultery was committed. And now they prove. When the verse already says your, right? When the priest is saying your thigh will fall away. And your stomach will swell up. It's already referred to her. It doesn't need to repeat it. And the fact that it isn't yours, it doesn't say that. It just says the, right? That's that's proof that we are talking about the man, right? Amen, amen, Kabbalat Shvuat, amen, right? This is the acceptance of this oath, al ha'Allah, amen. So why twice? So on the oath, amen al ha'Allah, right? So amen regarding what's going to happen, amen, amen again for hashvuah, Amen, okay. And the second Amen, im meish zeh, okay. So he says, I'm sorry, let me go back. I didn't do that very well. The first Amen is on the Allah. Remember, it uses both the words Allah, and it also refers to the term Shvu'ah. So the one Amen is for the Allah, one Amen is for the Shvu'ah, and specifically Amen im meish zeh. The first Amen is if from this man. A second amen, im me'ish achar, if in fact it's from another man whom she's accosted, even if it's from some other man. Amen shelo satiti arusa, amen that I did not stray, that's the sota, one who strays. Arusa, when I was betrothed. In other words, prior to marriage, unesu'ah, and married, okay? Shomeret Yavam. So, in other words, whether I was betrothed or whether I was married, Shomeret Yavam, whether my husband had died and his brother was supposed to perform a levirate marriage with me, and before that took place, I strayed, okay? Ukenusa, or even after that brother had married me, if I did it then too, because that marriage, the levirate marriage in that situation is an unusual situation in terms of the wording that's used for it, and also the fact that under normal circumstances, you're not allowed to marry your late husband's brother. You're not allowed to do that. Or it's put the other way. You're not allowed to marry your late husband's wife. Okay, it's normally considered incest. And I'm going to stop here. Mark the next page. We'll take it from there. Okay, and I'm going to stop the recording.